I'm David Glenn Taylor, and this is the Voyagers Podcast. Hi friends, it's been a little while. When last we talked, the world was still in a full-blown pandemic. It's slightly less pandemic-y now, and life was incredibly uncertain. That was over a year ago. I can't believe it that we concluded season 2. Remember chatting with author and speaker Rob Bell about creativity? No? Well, let me encourage you to go back and listen to that episode when you can. In fact, feel free to binge season 2 and season 1 if you like. So, this is the beginning of season 3. 8 episodes to the finish line. I've got a new set of curiosities and questions to ask from people in the know. And we're going to kick it off by talking about money. The thing we all need to talk about. Some of us don't want to talk about it because life hasn't gotten more certain since we last talked. If anything, it's gotten more shaky and insecure. And I don't know about you, but in my experience, it all tends to boil down to money. We all need it. We all want more of it. Most of us are unsure about it, and a few of us are downright terrified of it. Today's guest is here to help us. He's got an idea that, frankly, I'd never heard of before. I thought it was cool enough to share it with you. Mark Willis is a certified financial planner with Lake Growth Financial Services in Chicago. And a number of years ago, he stumbled on a radical way of finding financial freedom, becoming your own banker. So how do you do this? I'm glad you asked. And I'm really glad you're here. Thanks for coming back. We can learn on this one together. As soon as I heard that you're a financial, and I was like, I'm looking for someone to talk to about this because right now it feels very relevant to what's going on in the world. Let me ask you just about your story in terms of finance. You know, how did you get into that? What were you like in was this elementary school? When did you start figuring out that finance was kind of your path?
You know, the money thing became real 30 days after, I guess 6 months technically after I got out of college, because that's when the student loans are now in repayment. So that's when money became real.
And I
right?
can relate to that for sure.
But I can give you even an earlier memory, I suppose, about money if you'd like it. It was actually, I was 5 or 6 years old, had about $50 in a paper bag stuffed in my sock drawer somewhere. And I thought I was all that because I had $50 and wow, that's quite a bit of lemonade stands and, you know, whatever else.
How did you get to $50?
Probably a life savings, right? Of just this and that. I remember, side note, I saw a picture of one of my lemonade stands I had with some friends, and it was in one of those Radio Flyer red wagons. I mean, straight up classic, old school. And there was a sign on the handle of the wagon that said lemonade 5 cents. And I just had, like, a few days previous to seeing this picture, I had just helped my little girl. She's about the same age I was at that time, 5 or 6 years old. And she had sold lemonade. It was fresh squeezed orangeade for $2 a glass. So that should tell us something about insane amount of inflation, which we might get into some in our conversation today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But point is, I had this $50. My great mom, she wanted to get me kind of aware of money. So she took me to a bank with this paper bag held clutched in my hands. And I did the thing that any rational 5-year-old wanted to do at that point, which is not let go of that money because that was going to be my toys and my whatever. But now I'm supposed to give it to this total stranger called a banker, and he was going to take good care of it. Like, yeah, right. You know, I had a lot of distrust of banks, and maybe for the wrong reasons, but my distrust has continued, I suppose, up till present day of how banking has impacted all of our lives in a pretty dramatic way, whether we realize it or not. So that's sort of my journey with money at a high level.
You're in Chicago, right? Did you
grow
up in Chicago? Is this where the 5 cent sign was from?
No, Indianapolis is where I grew up, but always a Midwest kid. Went to school down in Texas, came back up to Chicagoland, and I've been here the last 10, 11 years. Although I would just tell you that if we're not living on the beautiful islands of Hawaii, we're all just sort of kidding ourselves. That's the honest truth, man.
Well, when we start talking about how much things cost here, which I'm definitely going to get into, then you might think twice about that. The cost of living is so high. It's gotten so high on Maui for the local people here that or working in the hotels or working in, in tourism or the kind of thing. I just don't understand like how can possibly, because we'll get into that in a second, actually. The economy has been booming for a long time now. For our listeners' benefit, just to kind of let's do a summary here of where we're at, what's happening right now, and kind of what you're sensing and seeing. And then we'll get into the kind of where do we go from here.
Yeah, well, I like to think long range, and that means I have to go back a long ways, and then we can go forward a long ways. I always believe it's a good idea, a smart idea to think longer than this Saturday night. There's an old Gloria Steinem quote. She says, rich people plan for 4 generations and poor people plan for Saturday night. Right. And I think that's true. That's true for our monthly budget and all that, but it's also true for our financial economy, like the world economy. So let's get a little history, and I promise not to bore your audience to tears. Let's just go back.
Good. Yeah.
I won't go back to the very beginning, although we might discuss the origins of banking, which goes back several thousand years. If you want to go there, we can go there. But
dude, you know what? We could let's do that first. Let's do a little 2-minute thing on that, because I'd love to hear some. I mean, seriously, I don't know that.
Oh, it's fascinating. Well, and it's a fascinating read. There's a great book by David Graeber. All right. And he wrote the book Debt, the First 5,000 Years. And what caught me was the word first, the first 5,000 years. Right. So this to me says debt will be with us forever. Right. And until debt do us part, as the old saying goes. Right. So the story in his book and the history he does really gives us a big fundamental understanding that banking and the function of debt, which is what banking is, has been with us since caveman days, essentially. That really rocked me to understand that we are all in the banking business. Yep. We're all products or recipients of, likely both, of this world called the banking world. It's the banker's world. We're all just living in it. And I have no problem with banking. I mean, banking is about as fundamental to the human experience as friendship is, or marriage, or parenting, because it's been with us this long. And there's this old concept of the longer something has been around, the longer it's likely going to be around. It's called the Lindy effect, where when you have an invention that makes it for a long time, it's more likely to outlast the newer invention. It's why I believe the old classic literature books will still be in print long after last week's New York Times bestseller goes out of print. Right. And it's true too with banking. If banking has been around that long, it's resilient enough to withstand anything, even if we change currencies, and it's going to outlast the stock market. It's going to outlast the income tax code. It's going to so we're all in the banking business. And the question is, who's sitting behind the banker's desk in your life? And I believe this. I believe, as a certified financial planner, and I work with thousands of clients all across the country. We've worked with folks for over a decade to help them set up true financial plans, plans that are not dependent on last week's memes stocks or this week's who tweeted what or whatever. And I really believe that who controls the banking function in your life will win the money game in your life. So if you've got the wrong guy or gal behind your banker's desk, there's not much else we can do. And it matters more who's sitting behind the banker's desk in your life than what you got on your mutual funds last year, or what the inflation rate is this year. So that's to kind of get us from 1,000+ years ago to let's say the early 1980s. But before I get into the 80s and where the stock market has been since then, I better hush. What thoughts or feedback do you have so far?
This is one question I have. When you're talking about the banker, I'm not talking about the teller that I see when I go into the bank, right? I'm who is the banker in when you're, how do you define the banker?
So there's the verb of banking, and then the noun of banker. I'm good with banking. I love banking. I just think we've got the wrong noun. I've got the wrong banker in our lives. And so the banker is anybody who is holding my cash as deposit and lending it out to somebody behind me in line. Some people are surprised to find this out, but David, let's say that you put 10 grand into a bank account yesterday. The bank does not keep your money in some sort of vault or in a shoebox with your name on it, right? What do they do with your money? They loan it out to me or whoever is behind you in line, right? How much of your money do you believe gets loaned out? If you could take a guess, how much of your money?
100%.
Yeah.
So that process, do you see that as a nefarious kind of thing?
Oh, it's if there's anything evil in this world, I'd say that's about as close as it gets.
Okay.
And we can talk about why that is, but
Why? Well, why do you think that is? I mean, because I don't understand it, and I was always, my understanding was that's kind of how banks work, and that's how I get my return on interest is that, or my tiny little 1% or whatever, it comes from that process. And so that's a good process, right? That's like what kind of generates our capitalist economy, right?
Well, so let's walk it all the way through.
Okay.
So let's say that you put in 10 grand into the bank and then they loan me, let's be generous let's leave 10% to your money. Generally speaking, they have been required, FDIC requires you keep 10% of deposits on reserve. 10% is so that means there's a fractional reserve of your money in their bank, and everything else gets loaned out to the guy behind you in line. Now, how much interest is your bank paying you to deposit that money? What do you think? 1%? Let's be real generous and say 1%.
Real generous 1%. Yeah, but it's typically like 0.3. 4, something like that. Yeah.
But they're going to loan it to me, and what's my interest rate? Probably, let's just say 10% on average. Maybe it's a credit card at 30%. Maybe it's a lower interest mortgage. But let's just say 10%. So how much of the bank's money did they have in that deal?
Yeah, zero.
I'll give you a clue. Zero. Yeah.
You're just a middleman.
Yeah. Now, what happened there? Didn't we just increase the money supply by $9,000 in that case? You think you still have your 10 grand at the bank. I'm using 9 of your 10. And what do? As soon as I leave the bank with my loan, I walk over across the street to another bank and I deposit that money before I go spend it, right? I just got my bank loan. I got my business loan. I got whatever. Yeah. Now I deposit my money into a new bank account, and they do it again with my $9,000. And now they loan it to the third guy behind me in line. And this can continue as many as 18 times if you walk that math all the way out. And so what they're doing is they are inflating the money supply. This is not the same thing that we've had for thousands of years. This is a new phenomenon. To inflate this money supply like this is a brand new phenomenon. And in fact, there's a lot of money gurus out there who tell you to live debt free, and we should all live debt free. I don't believe in living debt free. I just want to control the banking process in my life. Because it would be impossible for all of us to pay off all of our debts because there's literally not enough money in the world.
Right.
Among all the deposits, there are only $100 trillion out there in all deposits, but there's 10 times that in the way of debts and outstanding loans in
and IOUs
this world.
And all that. Yeah.
So anyway, what is this? Why do I say evil? And that's a very strong word for a financial planner. Yeah. Think of it this way. What happens when you inflate the money supply of the entire world? Everybody starts to feel poorer. I'll give you a real case number here. So in 1994, there were just about 300 million Americans. And the money supply at that point, the M2 money supply, that's like how much money is out there in the checking accounts, savings accounts, money market accounts, stuff sloshing around in our wallets, was a certain number. And since 1994, it's increased by 10 times. Okay, so we now have 10 times as much money as we did in 1994, but our population has only increased by 10% since 1994.
Okay.
So we've only had an increase of 10%, but we've had a 10x of 1,000% increase in our overall money in our pockets. So do we all feel 10 times wealthier than our parents did or whatever in 1994?
No, we're feeling the opposite.
Say no.
Yeah, we're feeling the opposite.
Yeah.
We're feeling, in fact, all those question marks are going up and everybody's going, I feel like this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense because I feel like things are, there's this great SNL skit. I'll link it in the that was came out, it was called Millennial Millions or something like that. It was a bunch of millennials and they're in a game show trying to figure out how they're going to just live, like try financially, and then and they have to try and stay calm when they bring out a boomer and the boomer comes out and is like explaining financial advice, giving like financial advice to them, and they're like, they're trying to just contain it because the fact that the math is not the same. It's just not. And and I think for a while now people have been going, this doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Well, that's right. And there's been an experience where, folks have had to work more hours. They've had to bring both spouses into the workforce. They've had to cut expenses. They've had to have fewer kids. There's, yes, we have things like smartphones in our pockets and we have, cooler
which is what the boomers are. Well, I didn't have a fancy computer in my pocket. And you go, well, that's great and everything. But
Yep.
also,
But we're in debt up to our eyeballs. This is the truth that we don't see when we're trying to chase after the Joneses, keep up with the Joneses.
Sure. Yeah.
The debt level has tried to keep, since about the 1990s, we've now exceeded what even 2 incomes per household can keep up with for the same standard of living. So since the mid 90s, we've actually been increasing our debt to income ratio as a country.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I believe that this has a lot to do with that inflating of the money supply. And more importantly, it's not like we can out return this in the stock market. And here's what I mean by that. Since the boomers are the largest group that are kind of going through the population distribution, we've got this, I call it the pig and the python, right? So imagine a python eating a pig. There's this large lump kind of going through our population right now. The boomers are this giant lump going through. Right. And so when they all came of age, it was like the late 70s, early 80s, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? That's when the 401k was invented, i.e. added to the tax code. A lot of people think that 401ks have just been around since, the dawning of mankind. But no, 401ks are actually so young, they're not even old enough to retire yet. This is interesting because it's the same point in time where we were getting off of guaranteed lifetime income that pensions offered and into the speculative world of the stock market. We all became a nation of speculators somewhere in the late 70s, early 80s, when we were taken away from us the pension and handed to us this thing called a 401k, where now the risk is on our shoulders. And this was wonderful because it was a tax deferred vehicle. And we were coming out of the 70s when there was very high taxes. What have taxes done since the 80s, since Reagan and whatever? They've come dramatically down, right?
Yep.
So now we've got this tax deferred vehicle, which is kind of the mainstay of our financial world. And when I talk to clients one-on-one over Zoom or over the phone, I ask them, I just say, hey, what do you believe? I don't care what you think about the president or the Congress, or I don't care about that. Over your lifetime, do you believe taxes will be lower or higher in this country? I don't know. David, what do you think? Just case in point.
All right. I think that, oh gosh, this is interesting. I think taxes are inevitably going to have to go up. It feels that way because, well, now I do a lot of traveling. Okay. And I spent a lot of time in Europe, and I always, if you're around the news ethos in the United States, you always hear, oh, the taxes are so high, taxes are high. Every time I go over there, I go, their standard of living is so high. And everybody seems so much more relaxed. And I'm always like, if I had to pay a little more tax to have this situation, but I never really was able to compute kind of what the kind of why. What you said about the pension versus the 401k, when that switch over, I went, it seems like in Europe, there's still kind of a lot of Europe is still on a pension kind of thing. And there's this kind of there are also all these guarantees that they rely on. And it just seemed like that lends itself to a better kind of way of living. It feels like taxes should go up, but at the same time, it's like politically, there's still just that the Americans are so programmed that high taxes are bad. Right.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, whether you feel like it's morally right to raise taxes or not, I'm okay to set that aside for just a minute and just think about the math, just doing the math on it.
Right.
If I defer my taxes to a point in time where my tax rate is higher, mathematically, that didn't make any sense. From a mathematical standpoint. And I agree with you. I think taxes should and need to and will go up. Most economists agree with you too, by the way, man. So way to go. But it was that piece of the puzzle where the taxes are now going to be a tax time bomb when you finally decide to take money out of your 401k. But it was also an interesting phase in the history of this country, because boomers were becoming of age, getting these 401ks, and they're all pumping money into the stock market, just through dollar cost averaging. Just, every month I'm throwing my $500 into the 401k or whatever. Company match, or and we ride that train up. And in fact, since 1980 to 2000, so from 1980 to the year 2000, the stock market did an average return. We'll get to that in a minute if you want to, of 12%. This is where Dave Ramsey gets it. That is amazing. That's unheard of. If you look at the long history of the stock market from the Great Depression, really since the late 1800s till today, the real returns are far less. But in that one little period of time, it's a dramatic chart. And I'd be happy to send it if you want. But
we'll post it, man.
Oh, okay, cool. But the this incredible surge, again, back to the pig and the python, this incredible surge shoots up. The stock market price goes way up over the next 20 years. We call that the roaring 20. A colleague of mine has referred to this as the roaring 20, where you have 20 years where the market roared at 12% a year on average. At the year 2000, something very interesting starts to happen. Well, we have the tech crash. And then a few years later, we have the real estate market meltdown.
Right.
And we've had a bull market up until recently. Now we're maybe back in a bear market again here now. But this is an interesting phase of life. From the year 2000 to the year 2013, there was actually zero gains.
Right.
And I actually call this the boring 20, because after the roaring 20, the boring 20, where we have a decade and a half with literally no gains. If you had put money in the market in January 1st of 2000 and looked at it again, 2013, and 13 years later, literally no gains, an entire lost decade, they call it.
Right.
So while it was not boring for those who went through it, it's very terrifying for a lot of folks. I got started in 2009, right after the crash, and saw the aftermath of all that. David, what was interesting is you could go a whole lifetime from 1980 to 2000 as a financial planner and just think that you could fall off a log and get 12%. Right. Like, it's so easy to just make 12%. And then we, as financial planners, get rocked for 13 years thinking, what am I doing wrong? What's happening here? I'm ruining. Thank God I wasn't in the business at that point, but I had the conversations with the CPA I worked for at the time, and I would listen to her make these calls to her clients saying, I'm sorry, Mr. Client, you're 62, but I just lost you a third of your life savings or half of your life savings. This is real impact on real life people. It's not just a chart. It's real life stories of people who can't retire like they thought they could. So anyway, that sort of brings us to 2020, from 2000 to 2020. And now what do we have? We now have 10,000 baby boomers retiring every single day.
Oh my gosh.
hitting the end of that pig python, right?
We're right at the end.
Baby boomers are
because they're all in
right?
their like mid 70s now. So the late to the party retirees are happening right now.
You got it, man.
That's
going
to
increase.
Like my stepdad is in that boat. Yeah.
Oh, is he? Okay. All right. So he's at that stage right now. And I bet you he's not packing money into the stock market like he maybe was in the 90s and 2000s, right?
No, not at all.
He's probably taking that money out, maybe doing stuff with the grandkids, groceries, whatever he's doing, right? But he's not an investor anymore. He's a distributor, or he's taking distributions, and multiply him by hundreds, thousands, millions.
Wow.
And what do you think is going to happen to the stock market over the next 20 years?
Okay, so this is
pressure,
right? This is where honestly, like I think that a lot of people that are listening, that's where we go. I don't know, what does that have? How? Because we haven't seen this, right? I mean, we haven't. The boomer thing is really unique in that way. We don't know what that does. Like, what does that do? Mark, tell us.
Oh man, well, we're all living through this grand experiment. I mean, again, the 401k is just one example of a grand experiment placed on all of us. The government seems to be really good at experimenting on us.
I don't think any of it. I certainly did not think of it as an experiment. It's so ubiquitous in our life. The 401k. I mean, it's like the obvious thing we're all supposed to do. I hadn't stopped and wait. Is it? When did it start and what did affected that? That's really interesting. So,
oh man, it's so it's so young. It's not. You can't take money out of a 401k until you're 59 and a half years old. So if the 401k was a person, it couldn't get money out of itself because it's literally not that old. It's so young, it can't even retire itself yet. So it's only 41 years old this year, the 401k.
Okay.
And I'm shocked too, because I too, like all of us, you just sort of handed that 401k at the first job and you feel so adult.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a coming of age kind of thing, like your first cigarette or something.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, man. So I don't know. That's sort of the stage. We've talked about sort of the unfortunate reality of kind of the debt levels, and how banks have us by the neck. Yeah. We've talked about how to get to our parents' standard of living, we've had to put more on the casino table of the stock market. Right. And most of us just are sort of like the frog in the pot, right? We're sort of getting that temperature raised on us 1 year by 1 year, 1 degree by 1 degree.
Okay, so let's talk solutions. there's an experimental kind of function to this a little bit. What is the solution in your mind?
Yeah, I don't think it's coming from Washington directly. I think it's going to start with one person, one family, and one family at a time.
Okay.
I think that's, and I don't think it even comes from some sort of magical guru. I don't want to be your money guru. I don't want to be the answer man. I can give you what's worked for me and a lot of our clients, but it has to come from within. You must become your own money guru. I tell folks this all the time. No one should care more about your money than you do.
Right.
And that includes all the folks advertising to you. That includes your investment guy or gal. That includes your attorney and your kids. Good night. Your kids will take that money from you. So no one should care more about your money than you do.
Yeah.
And so I would start there, just making a resolution that you're going to be the banker in your own life. Because again, I do believe that banking is the biggest problem, but it can also be the biggest solution. So self-banking, to become your own banker, is one of the great tools that we've found in the toolbox, not to just pay cash for stuff, but to be the source of financing that you need in your life. So let me kind of explain and kind of back up a little bit.
I didn't even know that was possible.
Me neither. But so one of the best and first questions I like to have, I really believe money conversations, if you do it right, man, it can be one of the best spiritual, like relational conversations one can have. And I didn't start this way. My wife and I were so bad talking. She was a lot better than I was at it, but we were so bad at talking about money that we would have to go to a public place just in case there needed to be witnesses. We'd go to like ice cream shops because we needed to pack ourselves full of sugar and cream and all that. So anyway, we didn't know what we didn't know. And one of the best conversations we ever had with money was with a mentor of ours who asked us, what do you want money doing for you? That was such a great question because we're told what we need our money to be in. Here's a savings account, go do that. Here's a 401k, go do that. Oh, don't do the 401k, do the Roth IRA, go do that. Right. No, don't do the Roth IRA. That's for suckers. Do this crypto stuff. Yeah. And so on and on and on.
You don't even get into crypto.
We're going to get rid of,
we're going to do a little 2-minute blip on crypto. It's going to be
okay. Well, but we just sort of start building this sort of bag of accounts in our, brokerage account, crypto, meme stocks, 401k, throw it on the backpack, and it just starts to weigh you down over time. Sure. And we never start asking, well, why is this in my backpack anyway? I'm just carrying it with me and it's burdening me. So that question of what do I want my money to do for me is literally the life-changing question that I would suggest anybody could do that for free. And it helps you become your own money guru. A couple of ideas. Start with attributes, characteristics, adjectives. Try to avoid labels, like don't use savings account, 401k, real estate. Set all that aside for a minute. What do you want it to do? What's the function? Think about liquidity, access to cash. How about taxes? When do you want to pay your taxes, now or in the future? Do you want this money to be private and outside of probate and outside of lawsuits, or do you want it to be exposed to those risks? What about competitive rate of return to keep up with inflation? These are sort of the kind of a short list, but there could be a long list. It could be 30 things long, 30 characteristics deep, right? If you were Pope of money, what would you want your money doing for you? If you could create your own magic financial vehicle and it was legal, let's say, like just go creative on you for a minute. Sure. David, you're very good at this. What would you add? Like, if you could just wave a magic wand, what would you want your money doing for you?
My wife and I, over everything else, we prefer travel. We want it. And so we would want money available to have whatever adventure we wanted to have, and whether that would be somewhat spontaneous or something that we planned for a long time. We've got 3 kids, and college, obviously paying for college is the biggest thing, right now is like, they're all, we got a 23-year-old, a 16-year-old, and one is just about to turn 13. And we're going, okay, we got to get 3 of them through college. I don't want them coming out with debt. I'm assuming you probably hear that from a lot of Gen X, every clients is I don't want my kids having the student loan debt that we had. I mean, it's such a weight around the neck. And so I think those are probably the 2 things I think about the most is my wife and I traveling, post kid, empty nesting, and then getting them through college. You know,
I just gotta know, when you live in Maui, where do you travel to? I mean, everywhere else is sort of a down. Maybe I'm overstating the case.
no,
there,
no.
but
The truth
I know what
is,
you mean. Yeah.
you're not. I'm not gonna lie. I love living in Maui. We love it here. It is absolutely wonderful. The cost of living, and this is let's just do a little side trip here. Okay, the cost of living has gotten so exorbitant especially over the pandemic. The cost of living has always been high in Hawaii, obviously. But you can figure out ways to do it, cost effectively, because you can do stuff like grow food, and you can, and farmers markets and things like this. And there's just ways to make it manageable. And also entertainment costs are really cheap, like, because it's the beach is free, and you go to the beach, and it's what you do. And you're surfing, and you're snorkeling and all that stuff. And my wife and I stand up paddleboard, and it's free. And it's the most incredible thing, right? Over the pandemic, it's like all of California bought Maui. Like every house, everything. I mean, there's no housing here. There's just none now. Like and the cost of living and the median house price is like 1.2 million. And my wife and I were renting a home, and we've been renting a home for like 5 years. And we were like, hey, you know what? We should really be, thinking about buying property and buying a home and owning something. And we started looking around, and something in the house that would just fit our needs is $2.5-3 million. And it's just a house. I'm not even talking about a fancy house. It's that's, we were on vacation recently, and a friend of ours lent us a house, and it was like, it's like a $2 million home. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm going. And it's a beautiful home. And it's not just a beautiful home. It's a home that on Maui would probably be $6 or $7 million. You know what I mean? And I just going, man, things have gotten warped here.
Yeah.
There's the solutions and stuff are, I believe what you're saying is the beginning of something to understand for people that live here. But our problem is extremely complicated, it feels. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'd say you bring up great points, and you're not alone in this.
Right.
I hear it all across the country. It's very extreme where you're at. But honestly, I love what you say, that, you want both the power and ability to see the world in the incredible world that we live on, and also to take care of the kids and to help them go through college without them getting into debt or you going broke. And
that's it.
And
I'm cool. Once they graduate,
right?
Hey, go struggle, go, whatever the world looks like for you, it's going to be different than it was for me. I just don't want you to carry the debt. It doesn't make sense for a person to start their career with $200,000 in debt.
Oh man, you're so right. Yeah. I mean, talk about, I meet with dentists, doctors, and we're talking mid six figures, 400, and then they get married to each other, and now it's 800,000. So anyway, you're exactly right, David. And so that is common. And a lot of our clients are business owners. A lot of our clients are working 2 jobs. A lot of them have some real estate investing, and they're looking for, what do they want their money doing for them? And so we have this discussion, and I think many of our clients too are pretty aware of the increasing costs. So they need at least a decent enough rate of return that they're going to keep up with inflation. A lot of folks also, when they are talking about college, they want to make sure that here's the gotcha when it comes to college. And then we can get to some more solutions, because that's more fun to talk about.
For sure.
With college, where you keep your money makes it do different things.
Yeah.
Now, this is not a brilliant statement. This is just obvious. This is true for everything. Where you keep your money makes it act different. Right. If you put your money into real estate, it's going to act different than if it's in an annuity or if it's in a savings account or So if your money is in certain accounts, it can be exposed to the college planning financial aid departments at the colleges that your kids go to.
Right.
They can see that. They can be like, oh, you know what? That kid has a juicy 529 college savings account. And so we're going to take a look at David's kiddo here and this other guy's kid. And this other guy's kid looks poor on paper. So who's getting the scholarship between the two of them?
Sure.
Well, David's got this wonderful, fat, juicy 529 college savings account. This other guy appears to be poor on paper. Let's give the grant or scholarship over to this guy over here.
Right.
But what's interesting is that guy over there could have had several $1 million packed in accounts that didn't show up on the federal student aid form for financial aid called FAFSA. So again, where you put your money matters when it comes to this sort of thing. And so anyway, when I was getting into this myself, I was trying to get out of my student loan debt. We had about 120 grand that we were trying to crawl our way out of back in 2008. And at the same time, we wanted to be able to build a business. We wanted to be able to live free. We wanted to be able to travel. I told you before we hit record that we ultimately went on a month-long trip to the Big Island. I'll tell you how we did that here. It all was centered around banking. Back to that paper bag, right?
Yeah.
I decided at that moment, when a good friend of ours, a former college professor of mine, came and sat us down and said, talk to us about this idea of self-banking. Yeah, it was a light bulb moment for me. It was an aha moment for me that if banking is the problem, then self-banking is the solution. It's almost like judo, or is it? Yeah, it's this idea where the opponent is coming at you and you use the opponent's weight and energy against them. And so if the problem is banking, then we can flip that around and use the concept of banking, not banks, but banking as our solution. So I had to dig into how you could do that.
Yeah.
And I stumbled into the CFP, certified financial planning process, stumbled across some other strategies. One in particular really solved the problem for me. And it's called Bank on Yourself, which is really just a concept for using a tool, a financial tool called dividend paying whole life insurance, of all things.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that. Yeah.
No, me neither. Yeah. So I
was waiting for I built a vault. And, but that didn't
I
come
opened
up.
an FDIC insured bank, and here's the deposit account number. Right. No, this is so strange. Of all things in the world, I wouldn't have thought I'd be thinking about whole life insurance. Again, my background in financial planning, got kind of the traditional view of things, worked for a CPA, got the whole stocks, bonds, mutual funds thing down. And as a certified financial planner, we still talk about that with our clients. But this was a very compelling solution for me and a lot of our clients. So maybe just I'll explain this quickly and
please.
Further if you want to.
Yeah.
All right. So whole life insurance has been around since before the stock market. So it predates the IRS. It predates the US stock market. It predates the United States of America. It's that old. It's hundreds of years old. What it is the contract with an insurance company where you can plow money into it. And you, of course, have the death benefit. That's fine. But you can also have this living benefit called a cash value. And it's almost like equity in your home, except that it's guaranteed to grow every single year.
Interesting.
Nothing guaranteed about my house, right? So the contract's wealth, the equity, grows on a guaranteed basis as you're packing money in. They give you a guaranteed increase in your cash. They throw dividends on top of that if the company's profitable. And you've got this big pile of money now on this side of the grass, right? Not the death benefit, but the living benefit, the cash value. You can use this like a bank. It's like a line of credit to yourself. You can borrow against this cash value, pay cash for the car, pay cash for the kids' college, pay cash for that trip. And just like a line of credit, the asset, the whole life policy, will continue to grow for you as if you hadn't touched the money.
Interesting.
Floored me when I saw that. Right. So here I am. I'm this young guy, late 20 something, and I'm throwing all my money at the student loan problem, like overpaying on my debts. And when I found this strategy out and I really dug into it and made sure it was legit, I lowered my debts down to the minimum, still kept current on all my debts, right? But I threw as much as I could into my policies. I had several whole life policies I had just set up, designed differently than Dave Ramsey talks about, cutting the commissions out of the policy, cutting the death benefits out of the policies, trying to squeeze all the expenses down to the minimum. And I flooded that policy with as much liquid cash as possible. It's a lot like overpaying on your mortgage. The more you overpay on that mortgage, the more equity you're going to get.
Right.
So I pumped all this money into my policies, and my debts were still slowly coming down little bit by little bit.
Right.
At one point, and along the way, over the next few months and years, I would borrow against my policy and wipe out one of my debts. My student loans were going away, and now I was banking on myself. I had a loan against my policy, but I controlled that debt. I didn't have some, repayment schedule. There are no required repayment plans when you have one of these policies. You are the banker. If you never pay off the debt, it's simply going to be deducted from your death benefit when you pass away. Right. Because it's life insurance. So now I'm buying back my debt from all these bankers, and now I'm becoming the banker myself. And now I'm in control of repaying that plan. But at the same time, my policy is still growing toward my retirement as if I hadn't gone into debt in the first place. And it gave me such a relief. It felt so freeing to know that my financial plan was solved. It was going to grow on a guaranteed basis. It's going to grow no matter what I do to it. And even if I access the money for a trip or to pay off my student loans, it's going to continue to grow like I had not touched that money, even on the capital I borrowed. In fact, and I'll hush after this, I promise. But as we're paying off our debt, we're like, this debt stuff, it's fun. And we're feeling good about paying off all of our student loans. But let's pause the student loan plan and just go on a trip. So we took that month-long trip to the Big Island, borrowing against our policy to live out on the Big Island for a month. We were just kids, right, in our 20s. And we just lived out there for a month and enjoyed the beautiful beauty of creation out there. And while we were on a beach, one of the black sand beaches, actually, we got a notice that our dividends on one of our policies we had borrowed from had been paid on our account while we were there in Hawaii. And the dividends were the exact same that they would have otherwise been had we not borrowed that cash, gone on that trip. Now, to me, man, that's like a no guilt vacation. So,
yeah, holy cow.
Anyway, so we ended up paying off all of our student loans.
Like, I'll have another Mai Tai.
Yeah, exactly. This one's on the bankers.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, we paid off all the student loans. We've ended up using it for other things too, starting our business, investing in real estate. But that's a real life practical solution. We've been talking high level conceptual stuff today, but I love bringing it down to the ladder to like, here's something we can all do one by one to opt out of the banking cartel and to become our own source of financing in the process.
For me, that's like worth the price of admission right there, right? This is kind of blowing my mind. I'm going to have to process this a bit. I'm assuming some people in the audience are probably having the same experience where they're going, honey, don't we have whole insurance? Kind of thing. Let's just shift gears just for a second, just if kind of something to help us kind of wrap some of these up. We talked about that a lot of this thing happened around 2008 during the crash, right? Let's talk about what you see coming in the next few years, especially these next 2 years. There's a lot of talk. I listen to a lot of financial podcasts and stuff like that. There's a lot of talk about that we're going into recession. Do you think we're going into recession? What is that? Is this 2008 all over again? Is there a housing bubble? Kind of where do you see things going? It's
a dangerous road. I think Niels Bohr has his quote. He says, predictions are very difficult, especially when they involve the future. So with that caveat in mind, I think it's going to be I think we've moved out of volatility and into turbulence in the world. I don't think we're going to go back to pre-2019. Boy, the problems of 2019 seem so quaint right now, don't they?
Yeah.
So
it's crazy.
So, given that, I mean, your guess is as good as mine is the honest answer. And anyone who says otherwise is selling you something, because no one knows the truth about where things are headed. We can all talk about trend lines. I've given you a few ideas with like where I see boomers heading out of the markets, interest rates continuing to rise. I don't know if we can put the genie back into the bottle with regard to inflation. Doesn't seem like we can, given 10 times the money that we've printed, since 1994. This was not all created in the last 6 months or whatever.
Right.
So it's going to take a long time to unwind a lot of that. And I think, honestly, the best thing we can do is find it within ourselves that we are our own greatest investments.
Yeah.
And that's true on a metaphysical level. The more you invest in your heart and in your mind, the better person you'll be, the better, husband or wife you might be, whatever. But I'd say also on a very practical level, if you can start a business and invest in yourself, like take a class, get a license, get a certification and invest in yourself, you are probably the greatest asset on your balance sheet. And I can prove this almost to a point with a mathematical formula, right? Like, let's say you're 25 years old, making 50 grand a year. That's a pretty nice salary for a 25-year-old. Let's say you're going to work for another 40 years and you never got a pay raise. So that's 40 years at 50 grand. That means your income itself is $2 million over your lifetime. And I bet you have no other asset worth $2 million. So what are you doing to yourself to increase your pay? Whether it's through just asking every year your boss for a pay raise, or maybe it's a side business. Maybe it's that lemonade stand, right? Selling for more than a nickel. I'll give you that advice. But I would say that the best way to combat inflation is to increase your income. It's not going to be I bonds. It's not going to be real estate. Whole life insurance, funny enough, it is interesting how it will improve with inflation. Back in the 80s, The rates on dividends for whole life insurance were 12, 14, 16%, keeping up with mortgages at that time.
Yeah.
But as far as like the actual way you can do something this month right now is probably find a way to get another stream of income.
Sure.
Do something to increase that capacity, because that's going to be the quickest turnaround, and combating inflation, I think, is going to be something we're going to be dealing with for the next, 10 years at least. I mean, we've been dealing with inflation since the Great Depression, really since 1913. There was a report done on the value of the dollar in 1913 when the Federal Reserve was created, and what the value of the dollar is today. It's lost value, since 1913. But how much value? It's lost 2,550% of its value. This means that if it cost you $100 in 1913, it would now cost you $2,500 to buy that same widget today.
Yeah.
And that's not stopping. I mean, it's actually speeding up. But so I would definitely say a big theme would be find ways to increase your income, and combat inflation with tools and internal resources that you can control and you have access to, kind of like you were saying, getting access to that cash.
I think my instincts have been telling me for a long time, like, hey, you got these little gaps in space, in time. Let's find a way to monetize some of that time that you have,
Yep.
And so that's really helpful. Let's talk about where we can find more information and where we can find you. And I know you've got your podcast. I'm gonna put some stuff in the close here, but I'd love to hear, like, where do you think we should go for some more mind-blowing stuff here?
Yeah, I would say for folks that are digging this, wanting to dig into it more, if you're wanting to build real wealth outside of the Wall Street casino, if you're wanting to build some strategies that help you buffer against inflation and become your own source of financing without a bunch of unnecessary risks or undue fees from investment advisors who are looking to retire before you will.
I'm in.
All right. Go to kickstartwithmark.com. That's kickstartwithmark.com. And if you're not quite ready to do that and you just want to kind of dig into this more, data first, so to speak, our podcast is Not Your Average Financial Podcast. You can find that at notyouravagefinancialpodcast.com.
Okay, awesome. Oh, I'm in, man. I'm in. That's fantastic. Cool, man. It was really great to meet you, Mark. And actually, I think you and I probably have a lot in common. We need to get together or something.
Besides just our barber, right?
Yeah, I know.
Thanks, David, for your
help. All right, cheers. The Voyagers podcast is produced by Sugar Sled Productions in Kula on the island of Maui. It's hosted, written, created, edited, and distributed by me, David Glenn Taylor. For those of you who want to learn about Mark's approach to finances or possibly even work with him, you can follow him on LinkedIn or find him at his website, lakegrowth.com. And make sure you check out his podcast, Not Your Average Financial Podcast. Listening to it, it does make you smarter about finances. It's extremely easy to listen to and very, very practical, which I think we all need right now. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. It's really appreciated. These shows will be coming bi-weekly in this final season. So 2 weeks from today, we sit down with a wonderful spiritual teacher and author, John Philip Newell. He is the world's foremost expert on the world of Celtic Christianity. He's got a new book, and he shares with us the ancient wisdom from the Celtic world and what it can teach us today. That's next time on the Voyagers Podcast. Mahalo for listening, friends.